Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Let us all join hands to celebrate this magnificent day. Thank you, universe, for creating book fairs. In Portugal, there are a few days a year that we specifically dedicate to book fairs. This year was the first year that I got to go to the book fair in Lisbon. It was such a wonderful afternoon. I spent a ton of money, which, yeah, one does, and I got phenomenal books. Now, this is no easy feat, but here are all the books that I got from this year's book fairs at Lisbon and Porto. It's my workout of the day. So if you check out my Instagram, I actually did a post exclusively with a few tips for how to approach a book fair. It's not always easy because it can be slightly overwhelming. There are so many books, also so many people and lines and prices, and sometimes it is difficult to choose what the best deal is for you. So if you want some good tips on how to approach a book fair, go check out that post. And in the meantime, I'll tell you how I usually do it. So whenever I decide to go to a book fair, I reserve at least the whole afternoon, if not the whole day. This usually happens because I go through the whole book fair twice. So in the first round, I'm simply taking notes. I write down the publisher that I see the title, author, and price of the book in, and I do this for the whole fair. Whenever I see a book that I like, I stop at all booths. I don't necessarily take notes from all of them because sometimes it's not my style, but I usually do this for all the booths that have books that I'm interested in. Next step on my book notes, I just compare if I've found the same book in different publishers, and I compare the editions and the prices. Usually I go for price, but there are certain authors in which I prioritize translation and the translators over the price of the book. That is highly specific to Dostoevsky, for instance, and not all Russian authors, but most of them. So after narrowing down all that list of potential books that I could buy, I do some mathematics to see if I can make it work into the budget that I originally came to the book fair with. Now bear with me, this has never happened in my life. I have never stuck to a budget before. Whenever I go to book fairs, it's just so many options and so many books, and sometimes it's an impulsive buy, and I've never regretted it though, so I think I'm doing a pretty great job. My wallet doesn't like me that much some days, but it's once a year. So. Okay, so without further ado, let's go right into these books, and I'm going to start with honorable mentions because there are quite a few. So we're starting off with Ídolos do Fado, which basically means Fado's idols. It's idols of Fado, which is the Portuguese music style. This book wasn't for me. I bought it as a gift for my mom. So my mom loves Fado. She grew up with it. It's very traditional in Portugal. It's traditional Portuguese music. Next up, this is a big ass book, and my mom actually got it for me, which is why it's such an honorable mention as well. This is an anthology of erotic and satiric Portuguese poetry. Now my mom bought this for me because she knows that I've been getting more and more into poetry and writing it myself. Now what is interesting to me is that this type of collection has never been made in Portugal because most of the texts that are in this book were actually banned because they were written before '74, in which Portugal was still in a fascist regime. So finally a collection has been made, and this is by Natalia Correia. Last but not least, we have a book by Nietzsche that I don't have here because I offered it to my brother. So my brother has a whole collection of Nietzsche's books, and he still didn't have that one, so when he saw it, I just offered it to him. The book that my brother gave to me is Demons by Dostoevsky. Now I have a whole Dostoevsky collection. I don't think this is news to anyone. I quite love him. He has written one of my favorite books of all time, which is White Nights. Next up, we have some used books that I bought for really cheap. I appreciate small vendors because secondhand books are a gift to mankind. I love people that aren't afraid to share the books after they've read them. I'm not one of those people, unfortunately. I wish I could be, but I can't seem to let go of the books. Even the ones that I've read and that I don't particularly love, I can't seem to give them away. They mean something to me in time and space in my life. Even if I didn't love them, they are still meaningful somehow. They represent a part of my life and a part of my history, and I can't give them away. But I really, really appreciate people who do, because books aren't that friendly to the environment. And so if we can keep reusing them and giving them away for other people to read, it's a really good initiative, and I support it fully, even though I don't partake in it. First off, we have Roma, and this is fragments of the piece that he never actually got to finish, Nicolae Gogol. This is by Relógio d'Água. It has translations from Russian of Nina and Philippe Guerra, which are the people that I trust the most with Russian translations. Next up, we have my beautiful Joseph Conrad. I love him. I think I've read most of his short stories, but this one I still hadn't. Now, I would have preferred to read this in English because it's the original language of the text, but I got such a good deal for it that I couldn't pass it on. And last but not least, Gotha. This is Vergil. I'm extremely eager to read something of him because my brother is a big fan, and my brother is one of the smartest people I know, so if he's a big fan, perhaps there is something worth reading here. Next up, perhaps we'll go by author. This is no news to anyone. I love Hemingway. I'm currently reading Hemingway. I think I never stop reading Hemingway. And so for that reason, I bought 3 Hemingway books, because I have a problem. But not that big of a problem, actually, because I bought The Old Man and the Sea because I didn't have my Portuguese version of the book. And yes, I do have a problem, and I just heard it as I was saying it. I have 3 books of The Old Man and the Sea. I have an English one, 2 Portuguese. Oh, wait, I have 4. Okay, I have 4, but one of them is not mine, actually. The original version that I read, the Portuguese edition of The Old Man and the Sea, is not mine, it's my father's. And so I wanted an edition for myself. Thank you very much. This is one of my favorite books. I reread it all the time. It's a quick, simple book. It's fairly short, but it's so beautiful. I've talked about it on my first ever booktube video, I think, so if you want to check that out. It's some of my favorite books. It's a shelf presentation. It's a whole deal. Next up is also a book from Livros do Brasil. I had never heard of this title of Hemingway before, and I've researched him quite a bit. Oh, sorry, this is the Nick Adams stories. It's Contos de Nick Adams in Portuguese. And last but not least, it's another of Hemingway's books that I had never heard of. And this is a 2 for 2 surprise because it's called Dangerous Summer. And I had never heard of this book before. Apparently it was the last one that Hemingway ever wrote, and I'm extremely excited to read it. Since I'm currently in Livros do Brasil editions, I will continue with Truman Capote's Music for Chameleons. And since we are on the topic of Truman Capote, I also have The Duke in His Domain, which is a teeny tiny penguin edition that I really adore. I bought quite a few of these recently. I also did like a small unboxing of books on my Instagram. You can check that out if you want to as well. And so the Penguin Modern, it's a short story by Truman Capote, and I'm fairly excited to read it. And since we are in Penguin editions, here we have Penguin Classics, also a short story by Robert Louis Stevenson, whom I love, for The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, also one of my favorite reads so far, quite unlike anything I'd ever read before. I am excited to read this. It's called Alala, and it's Stevenson's chilling Victorian Gothic novella about decaying aristocracy, vampirism, and tormented love. If this is not everything you want to read in a book, I don't know what is. Next up, we have Alexandre Colanos' Eurico Presbítero. This is a Portuguese author that was present during the 18th century around the Romantic period of literature. This is a Portuguese book that has a lot of credit and notoriety, not only for the story, but actually for the author himself as well. And I've never read it, so I'm very curious too. Next up, we have Pilsamentus, which means Thoughts, by Marco Aurelio. This is a book that both my parents and my brother have read, and all seem to be able to draw something different from it, and so I'm curious to see what I can get from this book. And last but not least, we have a Portuguese author. This is Essa de Queiroz, O Crime do Padre Amaru, which means the crime of the priest Amaru. This is not mandatory reading because I think it's an erotic novel, but Essa de Queiroz is a Portuguese author that has produced many books that have been made into the national reading plan for schools. So throughout years, you read several of his books. This was also a pretty good deal, and I know that what the story is about. There is a film adaptation in Portuguese that I've seen. I've just never read the book, and so I'm curious to do it. This was also a really good deal at the book fair, and it's actually a story I already know it. There was a film adaptation in Portuguese that I've seen. I've just never read the book, and I think it's about time that I do. Okay, so with that being said, this is the book haul all completed. I am not going to pick it up again because I would be crazy to do so. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's just a little teeny tiny book haul of all of my purchases of book fair. So that is it from me. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like this video, give it a big thumbs up, and subscribe to this channel. See you on the next one, and good readings until then. Bye!